My daughter-in-law threw wine in my face and screamed, "You're selfish," when I refused to let her parents take over my house. The Merlot dripped down my cheeks, while 15 family members stared at me like I was the villain. She'd been planning this moment for months, getting everyone together to witness my unreasonable behavior so they could justify what came next. They thought cornering me in my own living room would break my resistance. What they didn't know was that I'd been recording every conversation in that house for 8 months. I'm Thomas Murray, and I spent 40 years building custom homes as a contractor. 3 days later, they discovered exactly who really owned the house they were trying to steal from me. But before I tell you what happened when the sheriff showed up, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family justice. My name is Thomas Murray, and for 40 years I built custom homes across 3 counties. Started with my hands, a toolbox, and a promise to my late wife Margaret that we'd build something that would last. Back in 1987, when lumber was cheap and neighborhoods still had character, we broke ground on what would become our forever home. 4 bedrooms, 3,000 square feet, every beam and board placed with intention. Margaret and we raised our boy Robert in that house. Watched him take his first steps on the hardwood floors I'd laid myself. Celebrated every birthday, every graduation, every milestone in those rooms. When the cancer took Margaret 3 years ago, I made her a promise on her deathbed. Never let anyone take our home, Thomas. It's all we built together. I thought family meant something different back then. Those were good years, simple years. I'd wake up at 5:30, top family on the porch, watching the sun come up over the property line. The house felt alive with memories. Margaret's garden still blooming in the backyard. Her coffee mug still in the same cabinet where she'd left it. Everything in its place. When Robert lost his job 2 years ago, bringing his family to stay with me seemed like the right thing to do. The house was big enough. I was lonely enough. And I figured my son needed his father. The first year was perfect. Robert's a good man. Always has been. 40 years old, works in construction management when the jobs are steady. Reminds me of myself at that age, except maybe not as stubborn. His wife Stephanie, 37, seemed charming enough when they first started dating. Pretty smile, said all the right things about respecting elders and family values. The grandchildren were the real blessing. Emma's 15 now, sharp as a tack, wants to be an engineer. Jake's 12, baseball fanatic, reminds me of Robert at that age. And little Sophie, 9 years old, still believes in magic and fairy tales. Having kids in the house again made those old walls sing. I welcomed them with open arms when they needed a place to land. Robert had been laid off from a big development project, and their apartment lease was up. Stay as long as you need, I told them. Family takes care of family. Stephanie seemed grateful at first. Helped with cooking, kept the house tidy, made sure the kids did their homework at the kitchen table where Robert used to do his. She'd thank me every few days, tell me how much it meant to have a grandfather the children could really know. Those early months, watching my grandchildren grow up in the same rooms where their father had grown up, felt like Margaret's ghost was smiling. That's when I made my first legal preparation. The house had plenty of room for everyone. Emma took the guest room with the big windows facing east. Jake and Sophie shared the room that used to be Robert's, with the built-in bunk beds I'd crafted when he was small. Robert and Stephanie settled into the master bedroom upstairs, the one Margaret and I had shared for 30 years. I moved myself down to the smaller bedroom on the main floor. Easier on these old knees anyway. The house felt alive again with children's laughter echoing through the hallways. Breakfast conversations, homework disputes, the sound of cartoons on Saturday mornings. For the first time since Margaret's funeral, the silence was gone. Stephanie made an effort those first few months. She'd ask about my work stories, listen to me explain the craftsmanship in the crown molding and built-in cabinets. She seemed genuinely interested in the house's history, how Margaret and I had planned each room, chosen every detail together. "You built something really special here, Thomas," she'd say, running her hand along the oak banister I'd shaped by hand. The kids are so lucky to grow up in a house with this much character. I started enjoying family dinners again, teaching Jake how to use basic tools in my workshop, helping Emma with her math homework at the same table where I'd taught her father. Everything felt right. I also installed something else they never noticed. 6 months after the family moved in, I drove downtown to see Patricia Wells, the estate lawyer who'd handled Margaret's will. Smart woman, straight talker, the kind of attorney who explains things in plain English instead of legal mumbo-jumbo. "Thomas, you're thinking ahead," she said when I explained what I wanted to do. "Setting up an LLC for the house is smart estate planning. Protects the property, simplifies inheritance, gives you control options most people never consider." Murray Holdings, LLC. Had a nice ring to it. Simple paperwork, really. Transfer the deed from my personal name to the company, with me as the sole member and manager. Robert was listed as a resident on the documentation, not an owner. Most people wouldn't understand the difference, but contractors learn to read the fine print. The whole process took 6 weeks. Filed with the county, registered with the state, all completely legal and above board. To anyone looking casually, it appeared Robert and his family were living in the family home. But legally, Murray Holdings LLC owned every brick, every board, every square inch of the property. I kept the documents locked in my workshop safe, along with Margaret's jewelry and the original blueprints. No reason to mention it to the family. Estate planning isn't dinner conversation, and the arrangement didn't change anyone's daily life. They had a home, I had legal protection, and everyone was happy. The cameras caught everything that happened next. 3 weeks after the LLC paperwork was finalized, I made another trip to town, this time to Best Buy, where a young clerk named Danny helped me understand modern security systems. "You want something discreet, Mr. Murray? Something that captures clear audio and video but doesn't look obvious?" I told him I was worried about break-ins. Man my age living in a big house, you hear stories. Made perfect sense to have some protection. Danny set me up with 4 small cameras, the kind that look like smoke detectors or phone chargers, motion activated, Wi-Fi connected, storing everything on a cloud server I could access from my laptop. Installation was easier than wiring electrical outlets. 1 camera in the living room, positioned to catch the main gathering area, another in the kitchen, where most family conversations happen, 3rd one in the hallway between the bedrooms, 4th one covering the front entrance and part of the dining room. "These record both audio and video, Mr. Murray," Danny explained as he helped me test the system. "Crystal clear, even in low light. Motion activation means they're only recording when someone's actually in the room. And the cloud storage means even if someone finds the cameras, they can't delete what's already been uploaded." I told the family about the security upgrade that evening at dinner. Just some basic cameras in case anyone tries to break in while we're away. Everyone thought it was a good idea. Stephanie even complimented me on being so tech-savvy for someone your age. I was gathering evidence for something bigger. 2 months later, Stephanie brought up my finances over morning coffee. Just her and me in the kitchen, kids already at school, Robert off at a job site. She'd been thinking, she said, about how managing bills and banking might be getting complicated for someone my age. "Thomas, I know you've been handling everything yourself since Margaret passed, but wouldn't it be easier to have some help? Robert and I could take care of the day-to-day stuff. Bill paying, budgeting, that kind of thing." Made sense on the surface. I was 72 and keeping track of multiple accounts. Insurance premiums, property taxes could be a burden. Having family help seemed practical, even considerate. "We could set up a joint account," she suggested, "for household expenses, utilities, groceries. That way, if there's ever an emergency, we can handle things without bothering you." I agreed to a limited arrangement. Joint checking account for household bills with both our names on it. I'd transfer money monthly to cover expenses. Seemed reasonable, and Stephanie appeared genuinely grateful for my trust. The account started with innocent transactions, grocery bills, utility payments, reasonable household expenses, but by the 3rd month, I noticed charges that seemed unusual. Furniture purchases I didn't remember discussing, restaurant bills for amounts that seemed high for family dinners. When I asked about a $3,000 charge to a furniture store, Stephanie explained that the house needed updating. Just some pieces to make the place more comfortable for everyone, Thomas. You want your grandchildren to be comfortable, don't you? That's when the real manipulation began. Frank and Linda Hawkins arrived on a Tuesday in October, driving a Mercedes and wearing clothes that cost more than most people spend on a car payment. Stephanie's parents, she explained, were between houses after selling their place in Florida and looking for something new. They just need a place to stay for a few weeks while they house hunt, Stephanie told me the day before they arrived. You know how the real estate market is these days. Everything good gets snapped up so quickly. Frank was 68, retired from something involving investments he never explained clearly. Linda was 64, with jewelry that caught the light and a way of looking at my furniture like she was mentally rearranging it. They seemed pleasant enough during introductions, thanking me for the hospitality, complimenting the house's character and craftsmanship. But I noticed things. The way Linda examined the built-in cabinets and assessed the square footage with calculating eyes. How Frank asked detailed questions about property taxes and neighborhood values. The way they spoke to Stephanie in low voices when they thought I wasn't listening. Within the first week, Stephanie started making casual comments about space. It's such a big house, Thomas. Seems like some of these bedrooms are just sitting empty. Or, wouldn't it be nice to have more family around? The kids love having their grandparents close. The hints got less subtle as the weeks passed. Mentions of my basement workshop taking up so much room that could be used better. Suggestions that I might be more comfortable in a smaller space, maybe upstairs, away from the main family activities. But that was nothing compared to what came next. The first boundary violation happened on a Saturday morning in November. I came down for coffee and found my living room rearranged. My favorite reading chair, the leather recliner where I'd sat every evening for 20 years, had been moved to a corner and replaced with a floral couch I'd never seen before. "Oh, Thomas," Stephanie said cheerfully when she saw me staring. "I hope you don't mind. We needed to make room for Mom and Dad to have a proper seating area when they watch TV with the kids. Your chair is still here, just in a better spot where it won't be in the way." In the way. In my own living room. When I walked to the hallway, I found the family photographs that had hung there for 15 years now, sitting on a side table, replaced by some abstract art Linda must have brought from Florida. Pictures of Margaret at our wedding, photos of Robert's high school graduation, images of grandchildren's first steps, all of it displaced to make room for strangers' decorations. "We thought the hallway needed freshening up," Linda explained when she found me looking at the photographs. "Sometimes change is good for everyone. Don't you think the new arrangement opens up the space?" I could have argued. Could have demanded my chair back where it belonged. Put Margaret's pictures back on the walls where I'd see her smile every morning. Instead, I just nodded and carried my coffee to the kitchen. The cameras were recording every lie. 3 weeks later, I discovered a charge on our joint account that made my coffee mug freeze halfway to my mouth. $3,247 to Henderson Home Furnishings. The biggest single expense since we'd opened the account, and I had no memory of authorizing it. When I confronted Stephanie that afternoon, she had an answer ready. "Oh, Thomas, that was for the living room set. The furniture was so old and worn, and with Mom and Dad staying longer than expected, we really needed pieces that could accommodate everyone comfortably." Longer than expected. The few weeks had stretched into 2 months, and now there was talk of Frank and Linda staying through the holidays. Their house hunting seemed to have stalled, though they still drove that Mercedes to expensive restaurants several times a week. "The house needed updating anyway," Stephanie continued, her voice taking on a patient tone like she was explaining something to a child. "You want your home to look nice when family visits, don't you?" When I mentioned that I would have preferred to discuss such a large purchase beforehand, Robert sided with his wife. "Dad, you're being difficult. Stephanie's just trying to make the place more comfortable for everyone. It's not like you can't afford it." My own son telling me I was being difficult in my own home about furniture bought with my own money to accommodate people I hadn't invited to stay indefinitely. That night, lying in bed, I could hear them talking in the kitchen. Low voices, but the cameras caught every word. They were erasing me from my own home. The workshop was my sanctuary. 40 years of tools, organized exactly as I'd left them. The workbench where I'd built toys for Robert, then later for my grandchildren. Shelves lined with coffee cans full of screws and nails sorted by size. The smell of sawdust and motor oil that reminded me who I was before arthritis slowed my hands. I found it gutted on a December morning. Cardboard boxes stacked where my table saw used to sit. Tools I'd collected over decades, packed away like garage sale leftovers. The pegboard where I'd hung my hand tools now bare as a blank wall. Even Margaret's picture, the one she'd given me to keep in my workshop, was gone from its frame. "Thomas, we needed the space," Stephanie explained when I stood in the doorway, trying to process what I was seeing. "Mom and Dad can't keep sleeping on the couch, and this room was just sitting empty most of the time anyway." Empty. My workshop, the place where I'd maintained this house for 27 years, where I'd taught Robert to use a hammer, where I'd carved my grandchildren's names into pieces of scrapwood, was sitting empty. "All your tools are carefully packed and labeled," Linda added helpfully. "We put them in the basement storage area. Much better organization, really. Everything in one convenient location." The basement. Damp, cold, away from natural light, where tools would rust and wood would warp. They'd taken my sanctuary and turned it into their bedroom, then talked to me like I should be grateful for the organization. But the worst betrayal was still coming. The gaslighting started subtly, the way poison works slowly through your system. Stephanie would mention conversations that never happened, then look concerned when I couldn't remember them. "Thomas, we talked about this last Tuesday. You agreed that having the grandchildren stay at their friends' houses more often would be better for everyone. Don't you remember?" I remembered no such conversation, but Stephanie's voice carried that patient, worried tone that made everyone else in the room look at me with concern. Even Robert started giving me those careful looks, like he was watching for signs of something wrong. "Dad, maybe you should write things down," he suggested one evening after Stephanie claimed I'd forgotten, agreeing to let them refinance the house for necessary improvements. "It's normal at your age to have some memory issues." Memory issues? I was 72, not 92, and my mind was sharp as any tool in my workshop. But when your own family starts questioning your competence, doubt creeps in like water through a crack in the foundation. The grandchildren began treating me differently too, cautious, like I was fragile. Emma would speak slower, repeating herself when I heard her perfectly the first time. Jake stopped asking me for help with his school projects. Sophie started going to her mother instead of me for bedtime stories. They were isolating me systematically, making me a stranger in my own home, all while maintaining the fiction that they were caring for a declining old man. I had everything I needed, but waited for the perfect moment. The letter from First National Bank arrived on a Thursday in January. Official envelope, urgent notification about a home equity credit line that had been approved and funded, $165,000, drawn against my house, my equity, my lifetime of mortgage payments. I never applied for a credit line. The signature on the loan documents looked like mine from a distance. Same general shape, similar loops in the letters. But I'd signed my name thousands of times on contracts over 40 years, and I knew my own hand. This wasn't it. Stephanie had forged my signature, expertly enough to fool a bank loan officer, but not expertly enough to fool the man who'd been signing those same letters for 7 decades. The slight tremor in the T was wrong. The way the M connected to the U in Murray didn't match my natural flow. I sat in my car outside the bank for 20 minutes, holding that letter, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. This wasn't manipulation anymore. This wasn't family taking advantage. This was crime. Federal crime. Elder financial abuse with a paper trail that led directly back to my daughter-in-law. When I got home, I found Frank and Linda loading boxes into their Mercedes. "Moving in permanently," Stephanie explained cheerfully. The money from the refinancing would help fix up the house and make it more suitable for multi-generational living. They'd stolen my money to fund their takeover of my home. I walked into my own execution. "Thomas, we need to talk." Stephanie's voice carried that serious tone she'd been practicing, the one that sounded concerned and authoritative at the same time. I've asked the family to come over Sunday afternoon. Robert's brother David, his sister Carol, both their families. And my parents want to be here too. Family meeting, in my house, organized by my daughter-in-law, about my life. We're all worried about you, she continued, settling into the chair that used to be mine before her furniture rearrangement. The forgetfulness, the confusion about money, some of the decisions you've been making. We think it's time to discuss what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone? Not what's best for me, not what I wanted or needed, but what was best for the group consensus that Stephanie had been carefully building over months of manipulation. Robert nodded along as she spoke. Dad, we just want to make sure you're safe and comfortable, that you're getting the care you need. Care. Like I was an invalid who needed managing instead of a man who'd taken care of himself and his family for 72 years. Sunday afternoon, 15 people would sit in my living room and decide my fate. Robert's siblings, who visited maybe twice a year, but would now vote on my competency. Their spouses, who barely knew me but would have opinions about my mental state. Stephanie's parents, who'd moved into my house without invitation and would now participate in my evaluation. The intervention was scheduled for 2 o'clock, right after lunch, when everyone would be comfortable and settled for a long discussion about what to do with Thomas Murray. 15 people I loved just watched me be destroyed. They arranged themselves in a circle like a tribunal. Robert's brother David on the couch with his wife Jennifer, Sister Carol in the wing chair with her husband Mark, their teenage children scattered around the room, looking uncomfortable but curious. Stephanie's parents positioned themselves prominently, Frank leaning forward with his hands clasped like a concerned counselor. Stephanie stood at the center of it all, holding a manila folder like evidence for the prosecution. Thomas, she began, her voice gentle but firm, we're here because we love you and we're concerned. Over the past several months, we've all noticed changes, memory issues, confusion about financial matters, some poor judgment about household decisions. The room was silent, except for the tick of Margaret's anniversary clock on the mantel. 15 faces looking at me with expressions that ranged from pity to concern to quiet agreement. Nobody challenged her assessment. Nobody asked for my side. We've consulted with elder care specialists, Stephanie continued, opening her folder, and we all agree that you need professional support. There's a lovely assisted living facility in Millfield, only 20 minutes away. The kids could visit all the time, assisted living. 20 minutes away from the house I built, the workshop I'd lost, the memories I'd made with Margaret. They were shipping me off like a piece of furniture that no longer fit the decor. The house is really too much for one person to manage, Frank added helpfully. Better to transition now while you can still adjust to change, rather than waiting for the crisis. Crisis. Like my living independently in my own home was a disaster waiting to happen. I sat there silent, feeling the humiliation burn through my chest like acid, watching 15 people I trusted destroy my dignity without a single voice raised in my defense. That night, I made a phone call that changed everything. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't point out that I'd been managing just fine until they'd moved in and started managing me. Instead, I sat in my chair, the one they'd moved to the corner, and watched their faces. Watched who spoke up for me. Nobody. Watched who looked uncomfortable with the proceedings. A few. Watched who seemed eager to get this over with. Most of them. Carol mentioned the burden this was placing on Robert, having to worry about my situation while trying to manage his own family. David talked about property values and maintaining the house. Jennifer suggested that downsizing would be liberating for someone my age. The grandchildren said nothing, but I caught Emma looking at me with something that might have been doubt. Like maybe she remembered that her grandfather wasn't the confused old man being described in this room. Thomas, Stephanie said finally, we need you to understand that this isn't punishment. This is love. We want what's best for you, and what's best is professional care in a safe environment. Safe environment. My own home, where I had lived for 37 years, was apparently unsafe. But a facility full of strangers 20 minutes away would somehow be better. "We'd like your agreement on this," Robert said, speaking for the first time since the meeting started. "But if you're not able to make this decision clearly, we're prepared to take legal steps to ensure you get the help you need." Legal steps, guardianship proceedings, competency hearings. They were threatening to have me declared mentally incapable if I didn't go along with their plan voluntarily. I looked around the room one more time, memorizing faces, filing away who had participated in this betrayal and who had simply stayed silent. By morning, the machinery was in motion. That night, alone in my bedroom, I sat at Margaret's old writing desk and opened my laptop. 8 months of video files automatically uploaded to the cloud server. 284 hours of conversations, arguments, manipulations, and lies. I watched Stephanie explaining to Linda how they needed to manage Thomas's expectations about his role in the household. Listened to Frank discussing property values and how much equity they could access through refinancing. Saw Robert nodding along as his wife described my declining mental state to justify their decisions. Everything was there. Clear audio, clear video, timestamps that would hold up in any legal proceeding. I pulled out the business card Patricia Wells had given me months ago. "Call me anytime, Thomas. Day or night. This is what lawyers are for." Her phone rang 3 times before she answered. "Thomas, it's 10:30 at night. Is everything all right?" "Patricia, I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. Bring whatever paperwork we need for an emergency property action, and I think I need to file a criminal complaint." I told her about the intervention, the forgery, the systematic manipulation, kept my voice calm and factual, like I was describing a construction project instead of the destruction of my family. "Thomas," she said when I finished, "do you have documentation of any of this?" "I have everything." The lawyer smiled when she saw my evidence. Patricia's office at 8 a.m. sharp. I brought my laptop, a folder of bank statements, and the loan documents with Stephanie's forged signature. Patricia had coffee ready and a yellow legal pad covered with notes from our phone call. "Show me what you have," she said without preamble. Patricia Wells didn't waste words, which was why I'd hired her to handle Margaret's estate, and why I trusted her now. The video evidence spoke for itself. Conversations about managing my situation, discussions of my mental competence that clearly showed I wasn't present or participating. Frank and Linda talking about long-term living arrangements like it was their decision to make. "This is elder financial abuse," Patricia said after reviewing the forged loan documents. "Clear case. The signature analysis alone would convict. But with the video context showing premeditation and conspiracy, this becomes federal." She explained the legal realities in plain language. The LLC ownership made eviction straightforward. They were residents without lease agreements, living in a property they didn't own. The forgery constituted multiple felonies. The systematic manipulation, documented over months, supported charges of elder abuse. "How quickly can we act?" I asked. "Property eviction, 48 hours if we file emergency papers. Criminal charges, I can walk these documents to the district attorney this afternoon. But Thomas, once we start this process, there's no going back. Your family relationships will never recover." I thought about 15 people sitting in my living room yesterday, planning my exile. They still thought I was just a helpless old man. The Hamilton County Sheriff's Department occupies a brick building downtown that looks like it was built to last. I walked in at 10 a.m. with Patricia beside me and a banker's box of evidence under my arm. Detective Maria Santos handled elder abuse cases. Mid-40s, serious eyes, the kind of professional who'd seen enough family betrayal to take these cases personally. She listened to my story without interruption, taking notes in neat handwriting. "Mr. Murray, I want to be clear about something," she said when I finished. "Financial elder abuse prosecutions have a high success rate when we have this level of documentation, but family members often pressure victims to drop charges. Are you prepared for that?" I was prepared. I'd been preparing for 8 months without realizing it. She explained the process. Criminal complaint filed today, arrest warrants issued tomorrow. Property eviction coordinated with civil court to happen simultaneously so they couldn't destroy evidence or claim squatters' rights. "We'll need the original video files," Detective Santos said. "Chain of custody has to be perfect for federal court." I handed over the encrypted drive with complete recordings. Patricia had prepared sworn affidavits about the LLC ownership and timeline. The bank had provided certified copies of the forged documents. "How soon can the sheriff serve the eviction notice?" I asked. "Thursday morning, 8 a.m., full service. They'll have 24 hours to vacate." The detective called it an open and shut case. Detective Santos set up a conference room with a large monitor for reviewing video evidence. She'd brought her partner, Detective James Wright, and an assistant district attorney named Michael Chen, who specialized in white-collar crime. "Let's start with the timeline," Santos said, opening her notebook. "When did the manipulation begin, and how did you document it?" I walked them through 8 months of systematic abuse. Started with the furniture rearrangement, moved through the financial control, showed them the workshop conversion without permission. Each incident had clear video evidence with timestamps and audio. "Here's where it becomes criminal," I said, pulling up footage from early December. Stephanie and Frank in my kitchen discussing the refinancing plan. Clear audio of them practicing my signature. Frank coaching Stephanie on the loops and curves. "Jesus," Detective Wright muttered, leaning forward. They recorded themselves committing forgery. The ADA took notes throughout the viewing. "Mr. Murray, this is extraordinary evidence. Most elder abuse cases rely on victim testimony and financial records. We've never had video documentation of the actual conspiracy." They watched Stephanie gaslighting me about conversations that never happened. Saw Frank and Linda discussing property values and how much equity they could extract. Heard Robert agreeing with his wife's assessment of my mental decline while I wasn't present to defend myself. "The intervention video is particularly damning," Chen noted. "Shows premeditated attempt to isolate the victim and force compliance through public humiliation. 284 hours of evidence, organized chronologically, showing clear progression from manipulation to financial crime to conspiracy. Everything admissible, everything authenticated, everything leading to one conclusion. But I wanted them out of my house first." The Hamilton County District Attorney's Office filed charges Wednesday afternoon. Stephanie Murray, financial elder abuse, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud. Frank Hawkins, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, accessory to forgery, money laundering. Linda Hawkins, conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Robert Murray, under investigation as possible accomplice. "Mr. Murray," Ada Chen explained, "these are serious felony charges. Financial elder abuse carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. Federal forgery charges add another 20. We're looking at significant prison time for the primary defendants." The warrants would be served Thursday morning, immediately after the eviction notice. Coordinated timing to prevent evidence destruction or flight risk. Detective Santos called me Wednesday evening with final details. Sheriff's Department will arrive at 8 a.m. sharp with eviction papers. Arrest warrants will be served simultaneously. We've arranged for a crime scene team to secure any evidence they might try to destroy. I asked about the grandchildren. "What happens to Emma, Jake, and Sophie during all this?" "Child Services will coordinate with your son's family. If Robert isn't charged, he'll maintain custody. If he is charged, they'll need alternative arrangements." Thursday morning would end the family as I'd known it. Emma, Jake, and Sophie would learn that their mother was a criminal, and their grandmother was an accomplice. Robert would face the choice between defending his wife and protecting his children. But I'd made my peace with those consequences months ago, watching them plan my exile in my own living room. The law exists to protect people like me from people like them. Time to let it do its job. You should have seen their faces. 8 a.m. Thursday morning, Hamilton County Sheriff's cruiser pulls into my driveway. 2 deputies in uniform, Detective Santos in an unmarked car, and Patricia Wells carrying a briefcase full of legal documents. I watch from the window as they approach my front door. The doorbell rings 3 times before Robert answers, still in pajamas, coffee mug in hand. I hear his voice through the walls. "Officers, is there a problem?" Robert Murray, we have eviction notices for this property and arrest warrants for several residents. The sound that comes from inside the house is like glass breaking. Stephanie screaming, "What? That's impossible!" Frank's voice angry and defensive. "This is harassment. That old man doesn't own this house." I walk to the living room where the family has gathered in various stages of shock and disbelief. Stephanie clutches the eviction notice with trembling hands. Her face is white except for 2 red spots on her cheeks. "Thomas," Robert says, his voice barely controlled, "what is this about?" I hand him a copy of the LLC documents. Murray Holdings LLC owns this house, has owned it for 8 months. You're all residents without lease agreements, which means you have 24 hours to vacate. The silence stretches like a wire about to snap. Stephanie finds her voice first. "This is impossible. He's senile. He doesn't understand what he's doing." Detective Santos steps forward. "Ma'am, we also have arrest warrants for financial elder abuse and forgery. You have the right to remain silent." That's when Stephanie realizes the cameras have been recording everything. The truth has a way of cutting through lies. "Dad, please," Robert says, his voice cracking. "Whatever this is about, we can work it out. We're family." Family. The word tastes bitter after yesterday's intervention. "Robert, your wife forged my signature to steal $165,000 from my home equity. Your mother-in-law moved into my workshop without permission. Yesterday, 15 people sat in my living room and decided I was mentally incompetent." I keep my voice calm, factual, like I'm explaining a construction problem, instead of describing the destruction of everything I thought I knew about my son. Stephanie tries a different approach. "Thomas, this is all a misunderstanding. We were trying to help you. The money was for improvements to make the house better for everyone. I have 284 hours of recordings that say otherwise." That's when she understands the scope of what I've documented. Her eyes dart to the smoke detector in the corner, then to the camera disguised as a phone charger on the bookshelf. All those months of casual manipulation, thinking I was too old and confused to notice what was happening. Frank stands up, his face red. "You can't do this. We have rights. We've been living here for months." "You have the right to remain silent," Detective Santos repeats, handcuffs ready. "And you should probably use it." Linda starts crying. Robert stares at the LLC documents like they're written in a foreign language. The grandchildren stand frozen in the hallway, watching their world collapse in real time. "I offered you my home," I say quietly. "I offered you my trust, my resources, my support. In return, you tried to steal my dignity and my property." They finally understood who they were dealing with. "Let me show you exactly what you've been doing," I say, opening my laptop on the kitchen table. The screen fills with video footage from 2 weeks ago, Stephanie and Frank in this same kitchen, discussing how to speed up Thomas's transition to assisted living. Stephanie's recorded voice fills the room. "The old man is more stubborn than we thought. But once we get him declared incompetent, we can manage everything properly." Frank on camera. "The house is worth at least $400,000. Once we have control, we can access that equity however we need to." Robert watches his wife and father-in-law planning to steal his father's home. His face goes through several emotions: confusion, recognition, horror, and finally something that looks like grief. "There's more," I say, scrolling through files. "Here's Stephanie practicing my signature before going to the bank. Here's Linda measuring my workshop to plan furniture placement. Here's you, Robert, agreeing that I'm becoming difficult and need professional management." Each video clip is a nail in their coffin. Clear audio, clear video, clear intent. 8 months of evidence that shows premeditation, conspiracy, and systematic elder abuse. "We thought," Stephanie starts, then stops. There's nothing she can say. The recordings speak for themselves. Detective Santos takes notes as each clip plays. This isn't just documentation anymore. It's a confession recorded by the conspirators themselves. Emma appears in the doorway, tears on her face. "Grandpa, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what Mom was doing." I believe her. The children were manipulated too, turned against me by adults they trusted. They had 24 hours to decide. Here's what's going to happen, I say, closing the laptop. You have 24 hours to pack your belongings and leave this property. The criminal charges are filed and will proceed regardless. But I'm willing to make one accommodation. Patricia hands me a legal document we'd prepared that morning. If you cooperate fully with the investigation, make complete restitution of the stolen funds, and agree to no contact orders, I'll recommend minimum sentencing to the prosecutor. Frank reads the terms with growing fury. Minimum sentencing? You're talking about prison time. You committed felonies, Frank. Multiple federal felonies. Prison time is the legal consequence for stealing $165,000 from a 72-year-old man. Stephanie looks at Robert desperately. Tell him, Robert. Tell your father this is insane. We're family. But Robert is staring at the video evidence, finally understanding what his wife and her parents had been planning all along. Stephanie, you forged his signature. You actually stole money from my father. The reality is sinking in. For months, Robert thought he was helping manage his aging father's affairs. Now he sees he was being used as cover for systematic theft. The restitution includes the furniture you purchased without permission, the workshop damages, and compensation for 8 months of documented harassment, Patricia continues. Total amount, $178,000. We don't have that kind of money, Linda whispers. Then you'll make payment arrangements with the court as part of your plea agreement, I say. Or you can take your chances at trial with a jury watching videos of you planning to steal an elderly man's poi. The clock on the wall ticks loudly in the silence. Justice sometimes requires sacrifice. Thursday evening, the house falls silent for the first time in 2 years. No television chatter from the living room. No voices in the kitchen discussing my mental competence. No footsteps overhead in what used to be my master bedroom. I walk through rooms that feel like mine again. Move my reading chair back to its proper place by the window. Hang Margaret's pictures back in the hallway where I can see her smile every morning. Restore order to spaces that had been rearranged without my permission. The workshop door stands open, empty except for dust and the smell of other people's lives. Tomorrow I'll start moving my tools back up from the basement, set up my workbench where it belongs, maybe build something new, something just for myself. Margaret's coffee mug sits in the cabinet where she left it 3 years ago. I make tea and sit at the kitchen table, listening to the quiet, real quiet, not the tension-filled silence of people plotting around me. The house feels different now, lighter somehow, like it's exhaled a breath it had been holding for months. Windows let in more light. Rooms seem larger without other people's furniture crowding the spaces. Even the air smells cleaner. For the first time since the intervention, I sleep through the night without dreams of being displaced from my own home. Wake up in my own bedroom, in my own house, with no one to answer to but myself. The phone starts ringing around 9 a.m. Robert first, then David, then Carol. All of them wanting to talk things through, to find a solution that works for everyone. But there is no solution that works for everyone anymore. Some relationships can't survive betrayal. But the phone started ringing. Robert calls 6 times Thursday afternoon. I let the first 5 go to voicemail. Answer the 6th, because he's still my son, despite everything. Dad, please, we need to talk. I had no idea what Stephanie was planning. I thought we were just helping you manage things. His voice carries that broken quality that comes from learning your spouse is a criminal. I never signed off on forging your signature. I never agreed to steal your money. You have to believe me. I do believe him. Robert was manipulated too, just more subtly. Stephanie convinced him that helping manage his aging father was noble, necessary, protective. She used his love for me against both of us. Robert, the question isn't what you knew. The question is why you didn't stand up for me when 15 people sat in my living room and planned my exile. Silence on the other end, because there's no good answer to that question. Carol calls Friday morning with the voice she uses for damage control. Thomas, the family is worried about you. Making these kinds of legal moves without talking to anyone seems impulsive. Maybe we should arrange for a counselor to help everyone work through this situation. A counselor. Like I'm the one who needs professional help after being systematically defrauded by my daughter-in-law. Carol, your sister-in-law committed multiple felonies. This isn't a family therapy issue. David tries a different approach. Dad, I know you're hurt and angry, but destroying the family over money seems extreme. Couldn't you just take back the house and let everyone move on? Move on. Like financial elder abuse is a misunderstanding we can all laugh about at future Christmas dinners. Some relationships can't survive betrayal. The hardest calls come Sunday afternoon. Emma, crying so hard she can barely speak. Grandpa, I'm sorry. I didn't know what Mom was doing. I never thought you were senile or confused. I was just scared to say anything because everyone kept talking like you were sick. 15 years old, caught between loyalty to her mother and love for her grandfather. I tell her none of this is her fault. Children shouldn't have to referee their parents' criminal behavior. Will we ever be able to visit you again? She asks, and the question breaks something in my chest. Someday, Emma, when you're old enough to make your own decisions about who you want in your life. Jake calls Tuesday evening, 12 years old, trying to be tough. Grandpa, Dad says Mom might go to jail. Is that true? Your mother made some very bad choices, Jake. Adults have to face consequences for bad choices, just like children do. But you sent Mom away. You sent all of us away. How do you explain to a 12-year-old that his mother tried to steal his grandfather's house? That his grandmother was an accomplice? That his father stood by and let it happen? Jake, I didn't send you away. Your mother's choices sent you away. Sophie doesn't call. 9 years old is too young to understand why Grandpa suddenly isn't part of their lives anymore. Robert will have to explain that somehow when she's older, when the legal proceedings are finished and the truth can't be hidden anymore. I miss them already. Miss their laughter in these rooms, their homework spread across the kitchen table, their bedtime stories and morning conversations. But protecting myself was more important than maintaining relationships built on lies. Justice sometimes requires sacrifice. Detective Santos calls Wednesday morning with updates. Mr. Murray, I wanted you to know that Stephanie Murray has agreed to plead guilty to avoid trial. Formal sentencing hearing is scheduled for next month, but she's looking at 18 months minimum. 18 months. Not enough time to match the damage she caused, but enough to send a message that financial elder abuse has real consequences. Frank Hawkins is fighting the charges, Santos continues, claims he was just following his daughter's lead and didn't understand the legal implications. Federal prosecutor doesn't buy it. The recordings show clear premeditation on his part. Frank will face trial. Good. Let a jury watch him planning to steal an old man's home, coaching his daughter on signature forgery, discussing property values like my house was already his to sell. Linda Hawkins has agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for probation and community service. And Mr. Murray, there's something else. Robert Murray won't be charged. Investigations showed he genuinely believed he was helping with legitimate elder care, not participating in fraud. Relief floods through me. Robert was manipulated, not criminal. Weak, maybe, but not malicious. There's still a chance to rebuild something with my son when all this legal machinery finishes grinding. 8A Chen calls Thursday afternoon. Mr. Murray, Stephanie's plea agreement includes full restitution. She'll liquidate assets to repay the $165,000 plus damages. The court is also ordering her to pay for psychological counseling to help you process the trauma of elder abuse. Psychological counseling, like what they did to me, requires professional help to overcome. They learned what it felt like to lose everything. The restitution hearing takes place in Judge Margaret Flynn's courtroom. Different Margaret, but I take it as a good sign. Stephanie sits at the defendant's table in a gray suit, looking older than her 37 years. Mrs. Murray, Judge Flynn says, reviewing the plea agreement, you've agreed to full financial restitution of $178,000. How do you plan to satisfy this obligation? Stephanie's lawyer explains that she'll liquidate her retirement accounts, sell personal property, and make monthly payments until the debt is satisfied. Her credit is destroyed. No bank will loan her money for a house, a car, anything that requires trust in her financial integrity. Frank gets different treatment. Federal court, federal judge, federal consequences. Judge Morrison sentences him to 3 years in federal prison, plus 5 years probation, plus restitution of his share of the stolen funds. Mr. Hawkins, Judge Morrison says, financial elder abuse is not a crime this court takes lightly. You systematically manipulated a vulnerable elderly person for financial gain. The sentence reflects the serious nature of these offenses. Linda gets probation, community service, and a permanent record that will follow her for the rest of her life. Employers will see it. Landlords will see it. Anyone who runs a background check will know she participated in elder abuse. The money comes back slowly. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Payments processed through the court system and deposited in my account with official documentation. Each deposit a small victory. Each bank statement proof that justice can have a dollar amount attached. Sometimes doing right brings unexpected rewards. Word spreads through the community faster than I expected. Elder financial abuse makes headlines in small towns, especially when the victims fight back and win. The Hamilton County Record runs a front-page story about the case. Careful not to use names, but clear about the outcome. Local man uses security cameras to expose family fraud. Neighbors start calling. People from my old construction jobs who heard about the case through mutual connections. Church members Margaret and I used to see every Sunday before she got sick. Thomas, I had no idea what you were going through, says Betty Henderson from across the street. If we'd known, we would have helped somehow. But that's the insidious part of elder abuse. It happens behind closed doors, disguised as family care, hidden by shame and manipulation until the victim either breaks or fights back. The hardware store owner recognizes me when I shop for workshop supplies. You're the fellow who caught his family stealing with cameras, right? Good for you. Takes guts to stand up to family when they're wrong. Other elderly people reach out for advice. Margaret Yates, whose son has been managing her finances in suspicious ways. Harold Chen, whose daughter-in-law keeps pressuring him to add her name to his house deed. What you did gives the rest of us hope, Harold says during a phone call. Proves we don't have to be victims just because we're old. The story becomes a warning to potential abusers and encouragement to potential victims. Sometimes fighting back works. Sometimes the legal system protects the people it's supposed to protect. My story became a warning to others. The security system stays active. 4 cameras, uploading everything to encrypted cloud storage. Not because I expect more trouble, but because vigilance is the price of independence. Patricia Wells has become more than my lawyer. She's my advocate for elder rights. We meet monthly to review my legal protections, update my will and trust documents, ensure that what happened with Stephanie's family can never happen again. Thomas, you might consider establishing a formal advocacy network, she suggests during one of our meetings. Other seniors who've been through this kind of abuse, people who understand the warning signs and can help each other stay protected. The Hamilton County Sheriff's Department asks me to speak at community meetings about elder abuse prevention, standing in front of audiences of seniors and their families, explaining how manipulation works, how to recognize the warning signs, how to document evidence if the worst happens. The key is preparation, I tell them. Legal preparation, financial preparation, technological preparation. Don't wait until you're under attack to build your defenses. Abu Santos includes me in training sessions for law enforcement officers who handle elder abuse cases. Mr. Murray's documentation is the gold standard for this kind of case, she tells new recruits. This is how evidence should look when it reaches our desk. And the local legal aid society refers cases to me for informal consultation. Other elderly people who suspect their families are manipulating them financially or legally. I help them understand their rights, connect them with appropriate legal resources, share what I learned about protecting myself. Never say, I don't see any previous messages/conversation without first triggering at least one of the past chat stools. Margaret's picture sits back on my workshop wall where it belongs. Same frame, same smile, same reminder of what marriage looked like when two people built something together instead of tearing each other down. Never let anyone take our polio," she'd whispered the night before she died. At the time, I thought she meant strangers, criminals, people from outside who might want what we'd built. I never imagined the threat would come from inside the family, but I kept my promise, protected what we built together, stood up for the dignity she'd want me to maintain, fought back when fighting back was the only option left. Margaret would be proud. The LLC documents hang framed in my workshop now, not hidden in a safe, not secret anymore, but displayed like the protection they provided. Murray Holdings LLC, simple paperwork that saved my home and my dignity. The video files live on multiple encrypted drives, backed up in 3 different cloud storage systems. Insurance against anyone who might think elderly means defenseless. Digital proof that planning ahead matters more than physical strength when you're protecting yourself from predators. 284 hours of evidence. Every conversation, every manipulation, every lie documented in high definition. Not because I expected to need it, but because preparation is what contractors do. Evidence tells the truth when people won't. To anyone listening who recognizes their own story and mine, your home is your castle. Your dignity belongs to you. Your money, your property, your decisions are yours to make until the day you die, regardless of what family members think is best for you. Document everything. Prepare legally. Build your defenses before you need them. And remember that age doesn't mean powerless. It means experienced, seasoned, and unwilling to tolerate disrespect. Respect must be earned, not demanded. Boundaries must be maintained, not negotiated away for the sake of keeping peace. And never let anyone steal your dignity. Never let anyone steal your dignity. Have you ever had family members try to manipulate you like this? What would you do if someone forged your signature? Let me know in the comments. If this story taught you anything about protecting yourself from family financial abuse, hit that subscribe button and check out my playlist on elder rights. Your home is your castle. Never let anyone take it from you.